Yo, this is Alup. You got pretty big balls to watch Thorin's YouTube videos.
IEM Katowice, I think the 14th CSGO major is upon us. Obviously, I normally do like prediction video or something previewing the stages of the major. So I thought what I'd do is I'll combine it. I'd do a prediction video of the teams I think are going to get out, but what better way to tie that together than to just get the viewer pass, do the pick'em. You can see on camera who I pick. I'll explain my reasoning, and then you'll know the 8 teams that are going to go through. Right, so here we are in the pick'ems, and obviously we'll start with the 2 big ones. The team that's going to go 3-0, perfect record, make it through. The team that's going to go 0-3 and be eliminated immediately. Remember, this is the new Challengers stage, so it's not like in the second stage where it's like 0-3 is special, because in the new Legends stage, 0-3 means you go right back through the whole system. You don't drop back to the minor or back to the stage before this new Challengers stage. Obviously, the key thing to remember that's different from all past pick'ems is that in this format for IEM Katowice, ESL changed it, I'll put the link to the video up there, to where you have to play a best of 3 to progress to the new Legends stage, and you have to play a best of 3 to be eliminated from this stage. So actually, on the one hand, it in theory should make it a little bit more predictable as to who's going to go 3-0 and 0-3, because obviously we have some very wacky ones. Last major, Complexity went 3-0. In the past, we've had, I mean, not at this stage, but we've had the likes of FaZe Clan go 0-3 when they were the number 2 team in the world. Complexity was nobody's for this major. Different majors we're talking about. PGL Krakow was the one where FaZe went 0-3. But obviously we know Swiss system, notoriously hard to predict. That's different for this one though. Not only do we have the best of 3s for elimination and progression, but also we have this ELO system that's going to kind of keep a dynamic seeding throughout the tournament. And then the initial seeding, crucially, has been done by peer seeding, where the teams and the players actually rank each other, and then you take an aggregate of that, and that's how you end up with the seeding. So hopefully that means you actually should end up with some reasonable placings in terms of where people are here. So in terms of the 3-0 team, we're looking at the team with the best chance to beat out this particular field. So being as they've actually used proper seeding, you can't really get a clue by looking at the first matchups. Like as you'd expect, Fnatic and NRG obviously have much, much better seeds than some of the bad teams, so they're playing bad teams initially. So really you're asking which team out of these ones against the other 15 teams in the field is the strongest overall, bearing in mind they can't just be strong in best of 1s. They have to be able to potentially win a best of 3. So if I look at this field right here, the obvious first names I'm thinking of, yes, indeed, are towards the end here, which are obviously the better seeds. So Fnatic, that's not a bad shout. Obviously, they're a pretty solid team. We've actually seen them go head-to-head with some of the best teams in Counter-Strike and play very well. They have had not many big placings over the last few months, but even then, they were often eliminated by teams like Astralis, very strong teams. NRG's got to be up there. I think with the field here, as long as NRG avoided someone like Fnatic, I mean, they're a favourite to beat every single team here in a best of 3, except maybe Fnatic. And even then, I don't necessarily know. That would depend on the stage of the tournament, I think, as to whether they'd actually be a favourite over Fnatic. I could make a case that as a team, they're a better team than Fnatic right now. So Fnatic and NRG are the ones I'm really thinking of at the moment. Cloud9 obviously showed us a very impressive level of form, bearing in mind they had a stand-in and no proper in-game leader when they managed to finish second at E-League Invitational, almost won the tournament, quite frankly, played very well. But I actually think if you look at them as a team, first of all, because they're not a real team, like this isn't a proper lineup that's been together a long time, played a lot of tournaments and has a structure that endures, I don't really know that I actually trust them to be able to win all the best of 1s. Like I could see them just losing a crazy best of 1. So even though actually they looked solid in best of 3 player E-League, I'm not going to take Cloud9 here. NIP, this is another team, like put it this way, NIP is a team where every other team in this tournament, except maybe the Fnatic guys, wants to beat NIP just for saying they beat NIP, for beating Get Right and Forest. Like they're going to get everyone's best when they play them. ENCE is probably actually the team that's least likely to get picked to go 3-0 out of all the teams here. They're the big names, but actually they're a very solid team. And when you add in that it's going to be a best of 3 for progression, they're one of the better teams overall in terms of consistency in the best of 3. They've got a pretty nice map pool. Vitality very up and down. I don't think we need to look at any of the other teams in terms of going 3-0. So let's pick the team that's going to go 3-0. If I'm going to go, for me, when I try to do predictions, I go with what I think are consistent qualities. Like Every now and then on a one-off prediction, I'll go with my gut. Like if I feel like Ty Lue could upset someone, okay. But I generally think you should go by the numbers and you should actually figure out first and foremost who is mathematically most likely to win, figure out what the reasons are, hopefully articulate them, and then go with that team. That's just the fair way to do it. So quite frankly, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm immediately going to narrow this down to Fnatic and NRG. And I know NRG has never really done anything at majors before. Obviously, they didn't even make it to the last major. I know Fnatic has legendary players. If I had to pick someone to win a match for my life, I'd pick the Fnatic players over NRG. But that's not what I'm doing right now. Right now, I'm going just fairly boring by the numbers. And I think generally, it's going to be hard for many people to match against NRG. So actually, despite what you might think, I'm going to pick NRG to be the team that goes 3-0. Crazy as that might seem. So now let's do the 0-3 team. Who is the worst team in this field and or most likely to lose to these types of opponents? So I'll go ahead and tell you right now, I think for this one, bearing in mind, I mean, I certainly am not an expert on some of the bad teams here. I wouldn't claim to know like in depth their map pool, who they play against. So it's a lot trickier actually for me to predict the 0-3. So instead, I'm going to have to go by who I think lacks the quality to make it. That's the key thing for me. Like generally, they're going to lose to most teams. Map pool probably isn't going to be strong enough, so even if they get a map they think they're good on, they could lose on it. Probably would lose a best of 3 against any other team in this scenario. So if I look at the squads here, immediately I'm thinking of, unsurprisingly, the names that are at the end here. Vici Gaming, Windstrike, Greyhound Gaming, Furia, Team Spirit. These are the most obvious ones. I won't put Vega Squadron in there. They actually impressed me at Star Series, so I'll say they're better than that at the moment. Of the teams that are there, I have to say, Furia looked decent enough actually at the minor. Greyhound Gaming, I think actually fool's gold because people are just remembering them in 2018 when they obviously had very different players. Some of their better players have gone to Renegades. Windstrike haven't been terrible actually. Since they upgraded some of their players, they've been okay. Vici had some individual performances that were somewhat impressive. So quite frankly, I think this one has to come down to, I think it's Greyhound or Spirit. I say Furia has an outside shot of going 0-3. I could certainly see them just collapse, inexperience, etc. But I'm going to go between Spirit and Greyhound here. So the bizarre thing is, even though I think Spirit is a pretty bad team, I think actually that coming from CIS region, such an unknown quantity. They've actually upgraded some of the players in their lineup. I could see them winning a game. I could see them grabbing a win off a number of the teams here. Like if they play against any of the teams in the middle, it can happen. So to me, it's between Furia and Greyhound. Furia, I do have this feeling that they're just going to let down completely. But I actually think Greyhound's just not a very good team. Like I have to just go ahead and say it. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Greyhound Gaming. As a random narrative point, it's not really a point I'm using to judge here. Famously, Australian teams have been fucking terrible in the major qualifier, which is what New Challenger stage used to be. Renegades being a great example. Then again, though, it's not like they lost every game. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and be bold. I'll pick Greyhound Gaming to go 0-3. So we're now picking the teams that are going to go So 7, so basically the teams except for NRG who are going to make it to the playoffs. So I can go pretty quickly initially. Fnatic, too much quality, too many good players, easily the best player actually in this entire section of the tournament in Crims. Map pool's even been okay. Hasn't been super deep, but definitely okay for this stage of the tournament. Exists as a veteran. He's going to call a decent game. He already knows how to call against Poggy type teams. I think everything just says that Fnatic should make it through. Maybe not in first place, that's why I didn't pick them 3-0, but I think, bear in mind, they have to go minimum 3-2 and they can potentially play best of threes and get a bunch of chances maybe to make it through. I think it's pretty reasonable to think they will make it through. After them, I actually think the most reasonable team to pick next, because I'm trying to go in order of teams I think will make it out, it's actually not going to be Cloud9, it's not going to be NIP. I'm actually going to go straight for ENCE. I'm going to pick them. Because what I like about ENCE is I actually don't think their players are that crazy. That's what's wild. Like, listen, Sergey's a stud. He's clearly going to be someone good in about a year, 2 years from now. He's already a solid player. He's already a good player. But in terms of as a star player in a team that, you know, is looking like they're going to be a top 10 team, they're breaking the top 10, he's not quite a world star yet. Alu's a good player and a very solid veteran. Really, it's actually the arrival of aerial fragging has been come on leaps and bounds over the last few months. And then actually their in-game leader, LXCB, is... Here's the funny thing. If I was to order the most impressive aspects of ENCE, it would go number 1, Sergey, because without him, I don't think any of this is possible. Number 2 is not Alu. Number 2 would actually be Alexei B's leadership, because I don't think it's a coincidence that you look at this team and they're a pretty solid actual team. The cohesion is there. They can play most of the maps in the pool. They seem to have a fairly consistent style. I've seen so many Finnish teams over the years that just pogged, that just played free-for-all, that didn't give a fuck about professionalism. So you could say people like Alu and Natu being their veteran figures, maybe they're bringing some leadership in that sense, but the in-game leader at the end of the day runs a lot of things in a team. So actually I'm impressed. Alu's a very nice luxury to have, but those are the big 2 factors in ENCE for me. So I'm going to go ahead and say they make it through. I'm going to pick NIP and Cloud9, but let's make it interesting and actually go one by one. So actually, of the teams after them, I'm going to have to say I think NIP certainly makes it through. I'm putting them over Cloud9 because I haven't seen enough from Cloud9 yet. We just saw a couple of tournaments, and for all I know, maybe that was a spike in form. People figure them out. People figure their map pool out. People watch those demos. Flusher doesn't really like being an in-game leader. It seemed over his career. I don't know that it suits him that well. Individually, they played very well, but you could also certainly argue that maybe some of them overperformed. They generally had a pretty high performance level across the board, particularly Kiyashima, bit of Flusher, some automatic. So they're just actually a pretty solid teams in terms of fragging power at this stage. They had a decent map pool actually at A-League, which probably was the most impressive part. I thought they didn't just win on like one map. So Cloud9 obviously has to be next, right? I mean, NIP, what I like about NIP is they still have, I mean, actually for this stage of the tournament, they have ridiculous firepower. They're probably the most skilled team at this stage of the tournament. They have veterans. I know they haven't been in the majors in a while, but I think these are guys who, and the last one, these are guys who you can trust to not necessarily crumble in these matches, I don't think. Map pool for NIP is not actually that great, but then again, luckily for them, the reason actually I think NIP was overrated last year because they were never actually going to be an elite team. But the key thing for me with NIP last year is that the maps that they did play, the likes of Train, these are maps cash if they need to, nuke if they want to. These are maps that other teams didn't want to play. So as a result, NIP was able to get advantages in best of threes. They were able to get vetoes out of people when they were in the best of ones and get to a map like Mirage that they want to play anyway as the middle map. So actually, I think NIP well suited for this kind of a tournament stage, although admittedly, their problem here is they need to really know in depth the map pools of the other teams, and they better do their homework. Because if they don't, then they're going to have a couple of losses along the way, and I think that's entirely reasonable to expect. So we've got 3 teams left, and obviously now we're getting to the trickier part of the tournament, right? So we've got Vitality, obviously the Ziwu show, guy absolutely fucking carries them. G2's actually looked decent online and were surprisingly half decent actually when they played on LAN. So you got to consider them. And actually Kenny S online starts to heat it up a bit. Shock's already is a pretty good player, we know. Not really a huge fan of the newer players, but fair enough. They seem to have actually gradually improved over the last lineup. Of the other ones, who can I really trust to go through? Like Tyloo is a tough one because Tyloo can beat any of these teams here, and they could even beat some of the teams that are much better than them. But the problem is, Tyloo can also lose to literally half the teams here. So I think they're more of a borderline team to make it through. The others that I mentioned for 0 and 3, obviously we're going to leave them till the very end. So really the question is, who can I actually trust out of these particular teams? Like Renegades is a pretty solid team all in all. Vitality has strong fragging from Ziwu, which he should style on most of these opponents here, especially if he is going to continue the trajectory we've seen thus far. I think when you consider Vitality, they've only looked not that good against decent teams, like actually teams that are in this kind of level. But even then, Ziwu just hard carried them past. Oh, I'm tempted on this one because this is the one that I have to kind of go a bit with my gut. Because like Renegades, one thing I've always been impressed with Renegades ever since Kassad has been involved was how he was able to actually get the map pool to be pretty good actually. So you know what, I'm going to go ahead and say fuck everyone else here. I'm going to take Renegades actually to go next and say Renegades makes it through. They've had a decent enough map pool. The Azza one has actually been an interesting swap because obviously he always underwhelmed me a bit as a star player. Like he just never turned up when I needed him to. So him changing an in-game leader, I was worried at first, but it looks decent. And crucially, bringing in the likes of Gratisfaction, and then Liaz obviously has been pretty decent himself. Then add in somehow this new Renegades has made JKS go carry mode. I actually kind of like this Renegades side. I wouldn't be picking him to make Legends or necessarily is very strong. I think actually their kind of time to be good was when they had NAF basically and briefly in the early 2018. But against this field, I think it's reasonable to expect they should make it through actually. In fact, maybe there's a world in which they probably make it out ahead of a Cloud9 or an NIP. That's not impossible. So I'll take them anyway. So there's 2 picks left here. And I'll go ahead and tell you straight up. There's basically 5 teams I'm choosing between. It's Vitality, G2, a Vanguard, Vega Squadron, and Tyloo. So since I've talked about some of the other ones, the only one I really have to talk about is Vega Squadron and a Vanguard. So a Vanguard, again, considering they're not name value for their players, they have a decent skill level. Like you take Jim and Quickert, these guys aren't a joke. They're not bad actually. Jim a bit of a beta, a bit of an exit kill guy, but whatever. He can still get the kills. He still has a pretty decent AWP. A little bit more suspect when he's outside the CIS region in terms of performance on LAN, but whatever. I don't think actually playing in Poland is going to affect him in that sense. It's not like you play in the USA. Then you got to look at their map pool's not bad either, actually, and they've played some decent fundamental Counter-Strike. A little bit gimmicky at times. Then again, though, what I like is actually, of all the teams we're talking about in this section of the tournament, a Vanguard is a team that still has upset potential against those teams. Like, those teams just in their minds can't consciously take a Vanguard as seriously as they take Fnatic, NRG, NIP. So they can definitely catch people off. So you know what? Fuck it. I'll say at this point in the tournament, I'm probably going to pick a Vanguard, but what order am I going to pick them in? Let me think. Should I pick them at this point of the tournament? Like, would a Vanguard beat Vitality straight up? I feel like they probably would lose, but then again, would a Vanguard do better against the field than Vitality would? That feels like it might be the case. So this is a tough one. I feel like we'll take a Vanguard now. We'll see, you know what? I can't trust Vitality yet. We need to see more than ZWoo and the occasional MBK performance. We're actually going to go ahead and we're going to take CIS region. Who knew, right? Maybe I'm turning the corner on that one. Right, there's one team left to go with. And this is where I've got two ways to go with this. I either take proven quantities who've played decently recently, so that's G2, that's Vitality, or I take teams that have a ceiling that is way above the level it should be, but also a basement that's way below the level it should be. So of these teams here, as much as I have a lot of admiration in my heart for some of the French players, as much as I love to watch Tyloo play, I respect Vega Squadron for what they've done, people I think know my philosophy. I don't gamble on ridiculous upsets or like, wouldn't this be a crazy storyline if this happened? So Vega Squadron, everything they've accomplished has been pretty much in spite of what I think should probably have happened or on average would have happened. I think they've gotten a lot of upsets. So you know what? If they go ahead and do it this time, tip my hat to them. Well done. I don't think they will though. Kind of similar with Tyloo. Like I feel like Tyloo's going to do some damage in this stage, but can I trust them to get out of this stage? I mean, they've got the new upgrade with the players, which I certainly like. But then again, ZWoo alone could get you out of this stage. We know what Kenny's and Shocks can do. I feel like they might come online at this major. Can I really go with Tyloo and potential? Feels unfair to do that because the problem is Tyloo has the potential to maybe even be a Legends team, but I haven't seen it yet, so how can I bank on that? So it's got to be Vitality or G2. Vitality's got the best player of the two in ZWoo and obviously great veterans. G2's got some quality. See, here's the thing. I have a sneaking suspicion this G2, even though it's not particularly a lineup that I like. In fact, I'd cut half the players in the team. I have a sneaking suspicion they're going to be decent at this major, actually. So it's more about can people help ZWoo? And also, by the way, let's not take it for granted ZWoo's actually going to dominate this major. He's never played at a major before. He's never played a massive international tournament. He might just chalk it up. But you know what? I'll say there's enough quality in Vitality that despite all those envious lineups letting me down over the years, Vitality is going to be my 8th and final team to go through to the new Legends stage. This video and all of the content on my channel is kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, Gardner Wilson, James Harding, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, and as always, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to take part in an esports discussion with yours truly? Would you like teasers for some of my upcoming content? See who the guests are going to be. Do you want to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA? Perhaps you'd like to suggest a guest you'd like to see in my content or a topic to discuss. Well, if so, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.